Hey gang, it's KR King of D&D Homebrew, and today I'm going to talk about one of my absolute favorite settings to run encounters and storylines in an RPG game, and that is the Hamlet. And this is defined by me as a settlement of less than 100 and often only 25 inhabitants. And I think it's awesome for a number of reasons. First of all, it's easy to conceive of and potentially draw. There's a limited amount of structures you have to worry about, a limited amount of residents. If you do have an encounter, whether you're running on a battle map or you're using Theater of the Mind, it's pretty easy to conceive. A Hamlet is really easy to plug into an existing setting, in your homebrewed world, some area that you've thought up this idea and you plug it in. And the other thing is, by definition, Hamlets kind of not only just small, but they're often in remote or out of the way places, which is really great for any kind of like horror, supernatural, or weird setting, which is something I really like. All right, so the first thing that I consider when creating a Hamlet is, why is it there? Why have this small number of inhabitants gathered? Because that'll tell me, that purpose of how big it is, right? For instance, the smallest hamlet you can think of, which is often just a family, is the classic roadhouse. And the roadhouse developed, in medieval times and even, within a few hundred years. People didn't travel at night because it was dangerous, both bandits and also hazardous road conditions. So you'd have a roadhouse that would be a day's travel from a larger, village or town. People would go there and you'd have a building where they could get supplies or, food. They'd have water for the animals, a livery stable. Usually, as I said, a family that ran the place. They would have some accommodations. They'd often be like shared rooms or something. And if those were filled, visitors would go to the livery stable or whatever, or just sleep outside. Sometimes you would have a blacksmith to repair carts or wagons or shoe horses. You might have a general store in this kind of thing, depending on the number of people. But again, people are traveling through here. They're usually supplied to go where they're going, so they don't necessarily need to buy those. And of course, a roadhouse is an excellent place for adventure hooks and encounters. Why? Because it has a constantly rotating cast of characters. You've got merchants, you've got pilgrims, you've got other adventurers constantly traveling back and forth and stopping here. You've also got bandits and, criminals, cutthroats, con artists who are lurking to try to rip people off. And you've got monsters out in the area around the roadhouse who are looking to get a free meal. So the roadhouse would be a source of information and rumors about your world, political developments, weird things that have been happening, rumors about some, forest out in the wilderness or something in a town, that no one's seen the Baron in months in this northern city or something like that. Now, people might not necessarily talk. If you have a roadhouse in a particularly tough area, and again, I tend to run frontier campaigns. My players will tell you they're somewhat deadly campaigns. And sometimes people are a little close-lipped with strangers. They don't want to say something and get in trouble or have to be someone offended, or they just want to keep their business to themselves. But here's the thing. If you go back and forth through a roadhouse-type hamlet and you treat the proprietors really well, they become your friends. It's clear that they're their friends, and other travelers that trust them will start to talk to you, will give you information. So I had a roadhouse called Dagger's Rest that I used in my live table campaign that I'm running right now as the player character's first encounter. They were commissioned to take a load of ale to this city to the north, and the competitor of this tavern keep in the north sent down some bandits, and they gathered at Dagger's Rest, this roadhouse, to confront the players and say, we want to take these for ourselves. They had a big battle. The players won. And then on their way back, they sent another group, this enemy. This person became the first nemesis of the group. And it was a fun kind of introduction to the way my world operated. And it was an encounter that wasn't going to be too deadly, although it was a close call. And it kind of, got them as part of this thing. The guy that ran it, Dagger, eventually what happened was this nemesis gave Dagger an offer that he couldn't refuse, and she took over in this roadhouse. And so now they're trying to figure out a way to build a new road and whatnot. And as we'll see, the location of Dagger's Rest, the geography of it, also kind of contributes to the little bit of that Wild West feel. So as I said, you're going to have a limited number of people that a roadhouse hamlet, the smallest, can support, 5 or 10 maybe. I tend to have the structures as stone structures that are defendable because a lot of times any remote area in my world can be a little deadly. You do have wandering monsters and things that might come. But you may have a world where you could have a roadhouse hamlet or, any kind of hamlet like the Shire, of wooden structures or fanciful or whatever, totally not defended. That may be the way you play. But for me, when I have a hamlet roadhouse like this that's in a tough area, I have a tough person running it. Dagger was an ex-soldier, ran this with his wife. He had a friend from the army that was the blacksmith, and then he had his kids doing all the subsidiary work. But, he was not a guy that you could mess with. And this is another interesting thing. When you have people like this in a kind of tough environment, you can have leveled NPCs. He's like a 4th level fighter. He's not some unbelievably deadly guy, but he retired. He made a score in the war 30 years before and built this place on the road between the two of these cities. And so he has a history in the world and knows some of the people that the players, when they roll up their characters and create backgrounds, they're going to have some mutual acquaintances right away. All right, so that's the smallest, the Roadhouse Hamlet. If you have one that's slightly larger, 25, 50, or up to 100, you're going to have more for a reason for being than just a way station. And I call these resource spots, right? A hamlet that's at a mine. There's a fishing spot, off the coast. It might be a river crossing that has a ferry or a bridge or something. Now, this is going to be a low-income resource, right? Because if you have a mine that's pumping out gold and silver ingots, it's going to have a village, town, or even a city there, right? Whereas if you have a single mine shaft that's not producing a lot of precious metal, you're going to have a town there, 25 to 50 people. You've got the miners and their families. You've got the support people that build the mining equipment and maintain it. You've got a general store because you've got enough people now to support that. Then you've got people coming back and forth to supply this and whatnot. New people coming, people leaving. So now you've got a hamlet that has a kind of variety of people. But again, it's a one business town. If this mine goes away, the hamlet disappears. Because remember, there has to be a reason that a hamlet has stayed so small. So it's either a very single resource, the way station or tiny mine, or it's so far out of the way that not that many people want to live there. Because geography is important, or shall I say destiny, to settlements, and this occurs with a hamlet. So the one I have, Dagger's Rest, the way station, it's in this place called the Badlands, notorious for monsters. There are these groups of, they call them the wild people that live there, like ex-criminals and escaped, indentured servants and just people that want to be left alone. They live out in these hills, and of course all these monsters and stuff live there. But there's also an ancient road that's there, and this road cuts off like 3 or 4 days if you try to go around the Badlands. So this guy, Dagger, tough guy, started this Dagger's Rest so that he could, provide this, and he's tough enough to stay there. And as I said, some remote area that's, a desert, or it doesn't support much farming, it's, blasted hills of sunshine or something, or a swamp deal, because you can have an obscure resource. Let's say you have a swamp that contains certain rare plants that are used for potions or magic spells or whatnot, or even things like perfumes or dyes or something like that. But they're in the swamp, they're really hard to find, and you get a hamlet that grows up there of people that are supporting those who go to this swamp and look for them. But it's not enough to create a city. People don't want to live next to the swamp. It takes a certain type of person. And again, when we get to the weird effect or whatever, a lot of oddballs in this kind of hamlet. And again, these residents could provide information for adventurers, maps, perhaps guides, information on how to avoid the quicksand and bogs and whatnot, the will-o-wisps that come out to lure adventurers to their doom. And here's another classic resource for, an RPG game that's only going to support a hamlet-sized community, and that's the cave entrance. In the United States, cave entrances were often on land that was privately owned, like Mammoth Cave in Kentucky is the most famous example. Now, the government eventually took over this as a park eminent domain, much to the irritation of the owners who had made a lot of money over the years running tours. They controlled the entrance, right? Well, suppose you have a cave entrance in a D&D setting, someone owns this land, and adventurers want to go here. Maybe it's got some entrance, into the Underdark or, unknown caverns. It's never been explored completely. They're going to come to see about if it connects to areas with monsters, treasure. There's legends about this. So if you think about the Dungeon of the Mad Mage with a yawning portal, right, this chamber, now that's more for convenience. You've got a whole dungeon structure made by Hallister. This is just a cave that leads potentially to the Underdark. but it's going to be carefully sealed to prevent monsters from coming out. Perhaps 2 different grates or something that have to be removed when you've paid the owners the entrance fee. And the thing is, there's going to be support services for those that want to explore, lanterns or climbing gear. People may forget those or not realize they need special ladders or grappling hooks or a certain kind of rope. And there might be a roadhouse there for those that have traveled a long distance and they've come after a day's journey and they want to get a good night's rest before they go into the cavern. And the thing about this I really like is it connects to an RPG, Underdark exploration motif, but it also has historical provenance because there were these caverns in places that were run. They did support a hamlet. You still see on the roadside, when I'm traveling, come see so-and-so caverns, right? It does support, just a small little hamlet of oddball people. Another thing about a resource hamlet is, these residents are very dependent on this, and it can be a tremendous adventure hook if for some reason that resource goes away. This is a mysterious, it isn't just they're out of ore or whatever, something is interfering with the mining operation. The miners have broken through to some undiscovered chamber, and either some monster has come out or whatever, or something else, a strange sort of creeping malaise has come over the town the moment they broke through this chamber. And now all those dwell there are listless and morose. And the residents want someone to come in there and either get rid of whatever monster has come out or figure out the source of this creeping doom that has come over them. And being a hamlet, being a one-resource town, they don't have that much money. They can't just go to a big city and hire a bunch of guys because they don't have enough to pay. But player characters, this is the sort of thing they're made for. Why? Because that there's going to be something. If there's some monster that came out of it, what is it? What's going on here? Another classic is a hamlet that at one time was a village or even a town. It's a place in decline. Maybe the road bypassed it. Maybe, there was the mine ran out or whatever. The land all went bad. Or maybe there's some curse that overtook them. So now you have a few diehard residents and dilapidated buildings, just hanging in there, hoping things are going to turn around. And you also have a great resource for a setting that I really like, which is horror or supernatural or just the weird. Because you've got these, a lot of the buildings are ruined and you've got old crones and, criminals and people on the lam. Think about the tavern in the Outlaw Josie Wales where the last few people are sitting there just hoping that the mine will reopen. And of course, we know it never will. And this is one step away from ghost towns, which I love as well. I did a whole video on this. I'll put a link up there on that. The other thing about a dying hamlet is it's a great place for a criminal organization to take over. You've got these structures there. You've got where they can stay at night. They can plan their operation. They can conduct raids. A few citizens left that they just, bully around because there's not enough of them to make a stand. Or you can have the cult that needs a little privacy to complete their evil rituals of summoning. Sounds good to me. And, this is where the supernatural, weird horror thing, with the cult, or if you've got undead, let's say a vampire, they need more than just, bodies, people to feed upon. I think they also want to sort of recreate the life that they, once led, that they both loathe and, want so badly back. And so you've got this town there with these people and, if you've read The Curse of Strahd, they talk about their weird behavior, their listlessness. Something is going on here that you realize when you meet these townspeople. I think about the setting for H.P. Lovecraft's The Color Out of Space. I think it's just a few farmhouses, but it's almost a hamlet. This meteor lands and begins to infect the residents with this strange, thing, and people begin to die and stuff, and throw themselves into this well, and other people begin to move away. So you can have a similar thing in a hamlet. The people unaffected have left, and only those left that are affected, but somehow they're able to sort of sustain themselves here, sort of going through the motions of their former lives. Or the miners unleash this creeping doom or some kind of plague or something, and there's a few people that were immune to this or whatever, so they continue to try to hang on. They're doing this kind of in honor of their loved ones that all passed away. They don't want to leave, or they're infected and don't realize it. So the players go into some town and everyone is acting strange. No one is acknowledging their presence. Everyone is going through the motions. They're not talking to one another. They go up in the tavern, the barkeep just hands them their drink, says nothing. And then maybe if they start to question people and say, what's going on? People become violently angry and tell them to leave them alone. and then go right back to what they were doing, as though they're not there. And the thing is, the players could possibly investigate this right with these people who are all wandering around. They realize these people are sort of enacting their roles in whatever life they led before this thing happened to them, and they're trying to figure out what it is. But of course, as they're investigating, ignored by the residents who shuffle along in this weird lassitude and lethargy, the players begin to realize, maybe too late, that the same effect is happening to them. Because here's the thing, a hamlet is an excellent place for some weird, supernatural, or horror thing to occur because it's often out of the way, and it doesn't contain too many people, and people don't necessarily go in and out of here very often. So this is the classic remote place that we see in horror movies, stories and whatnot, where the protagonists go and, just stop. Why they stop, they don't even know, or they get lost and they go up into the hills and they find some place, right? This is what's great about a hamlet. And the thing is, you don't have to do that much work. You just got to think about, if you've got 25 people, you've got maybe 3 or 4 main people, villagers and whatnot, but they'll stay to themselves. And then you've got, what is the issue here? What's going on? Is it a monster? Is it some effect? Is it a cult? Is it, or do the players just simply want to go to the hamlet, go to the cave complex and explore that, right? And you got to set up such that it has verisimilitude. It does seem realistic. You have a sense of exactly who's there, what's going to happen, who the players can talk to, right? And you can put this almost anywhere on the edges of your world. So I hope that helps you. I'd love to hear how you guys create hamlets, how you've used these before. One of my favorites, maybe because it's so easy to do. And if this video is helpful, hey, subscribe to my channel. Always looking for more. Love to read comments. As you know, I try to always answer them. But most importantly, my friends, keep playing an RPG game, whichever one you choose, and tell somebody else about it.